Let's bring this meeting to order. Jeremy, Vice Mayor Jeremy, would you mind doing a Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Of course, you're welcome. Would please stand and face the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have invocation by Dr. Bob from the Reverend Servant Air Ministries.
Can we pray together? Father God, we are just blessed here in Cocoa Beach. The weather's been great, Father. Not too many incidents, Father, for this spring break. And the weather, Father, from hurricanes to nil, have been wonderful. You have showed us favor, so Father, we love you with all our heart and all our mind. You are the King of the universe. You are the Father of creation. We bow down before you, Lord, saying thank you. We love you, Lord. And Father, I especially give thanks for what you have done with the city council and the mayor, Lord, how they have gone by your guidance and your leadership, Lord, to be able to make right decisions. First is gaining information, and second is assimilating that in a way, Father, where they can use their wisdom, Lord, to carry out the tasks they have before us. And Father, we just ask for continued protection of the people of Cocoa Beach, the businesses, Lord, the churches, Father, all those that come here, Father, to know you and to worship you, Lord. That's very important. So, Father God, as they conduct business tonight, Lord, guide them by your Holy Spirit. Guide them by the finger of God to basically make the decisions they need to make in a speedy and fashionable manner, Father. We just thank you. We love you. And we thank you in the name of the Father. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much.
Amen.
City Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
Commissioner Williams?
Here.
Commissioner Woolis? Commissioner Hutchison?
Here.
And Mayor Capizzi.
Here. All right, we've got a special presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Commission, City Manager, City Attorney, citizens. Good evening. Hi. Okay, so this is one of the most special parts of my job is to continue this tradition that we started several months ago and we got away from for a couple months for various reasons, but we're back on track now. Whenever we bring new officers on board in this city, I think it's important, our staff believes in this, that we recite aloud our code of ethics to the commission and to the citizens and the community. Quite frankly, the reason for that is you need to hold us accountable. I've said that many times, and we need to hold each other accountable. So all these officers have already signed this as they've been on for a while, but it's important for us to do this so you know who they are and they know who you are, okay? So after that, we will have the oath of honor read aloud, which they will recite, and then we will do a badge pinning, okay? So if you'll bear with me for a minute, please. As a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve mankind, to safeguard lives and property, to protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder. I will keep my private life unsullied as an example to all. Maintain courageous calm in the face of danger, scorn, or ridicule. Develop self-restraint and be constantly mindful of the welfare of others. Honest in thought and deed in both my personal and official life. I will be exemplary in obeying the laws of the land and the regulations of my department. Whenever I see or hear of a confidential nature or that is confided in me in my official capacity will be kept ever secret unless revelation is necessary in the performance of my duties. I will never act officiously or permit personal feelings, prejudices, animosities, or friendships to influence my decisions, with no compromise for crime and relentless prosecution of criminals. I will enforce the law courteously and appropriately without fear or favor, malice or ill will, never employing unnecessary force or violence, and never accepting gratuities. I recognize the badge of my office as a symbol of public faith, and I accept it as a public trust to be held as long as I am true to the ethics of the police service. I will constantly strive to achieve these objectives and ideals, dedicating myself before God and my chosen profession, law enforcement. Okay. Gentlemen, please raise your right hands and repeat after me. I should introduce these guys first, actually. Sorry. This is Officer Jacob Werda, Officer Ali Zarif, and Officer Brandon Tate. That's who they are. Okay. So, please raise your right hand. Now you actually know their names. Okay. Repeat after me. On my honor.
On my honor,
I will never
I will never
betray my badge,
betray my badge,
my integrity,
my integrity,
my character,
my character,
or the public trust.
or the public trust.
I will always
I will always
have the courage
have the courage
to hold myself
to hold myself
and fellow officers
and fellow officers
accountable for our actions.
accountable for our actions.
I will always support the Constitution
I will always support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the state of Florida.
and the state of Florida.
I will, in all respects,
I will in all respects
observe and uphold
observe and uphold
the provisions of the Charter
the provisions of the Charter
and ordinances
and ordinances
of the City of Cocoa Beach,
of the city of Cocoa Beach,
and will faithfully
and will faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of police officer
of police officer
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my abilities.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so if Jordan Zimmer, Brandon's fiance, could please come up. Major Chris Keelan for Officer Zarif, and Corporal Matt Eastman for Officer Werda. Please come around front and let's just pin these gentlemen. And Rachel, if you'd like to get a photo or 10, that would be great. Okay.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to having you guys with us for many years to come. All right, can we get approval of the agenda?
I request to move item H2 from consent agenda for further discussion.
Okay, I got a request to move H2.
So if we move that, I'll make a motion to approve it, moving H2 for discussion.
Is this working? Okay. So I got a request to remove H2 from consent.
Other than that, I'd make a motion to approve the agenda as.
With a motion
H2
to
moved.
approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes. Can't hear anything. Motion passes 5-0. I don't know if maybe we can get these mics turned up a little bit so we don't have to speak on top of them. All right. Okay, any public comment about items that are not on the agenda? I've got one from Isabella Capizzi. Would you mind coming up?
Hi, my name is Isabella Capizzi. I live on St. Croix Avenue, and I'm a Freedom 7 student. I'm here to talk about SDG 6. SDG stands for Sustainable Development Goals. SDG 6 is one of the many goals and is known as clean water and sanitation. This means that our goal is to clean contaminated water and clean germs for all. This global issue is very important because thousands of people die a day due to not having access to clean water and sanitation. Did you know that 1 in 3 people around the world do not have access to clean water? That means that 2.2 billion people around the world don't have access to clean water. Not just that, but 4.2 billion people don't have access to good sanitation. In conclusion, SDG 6 is globally a big problem. It needs to be fixed. If we all help a little bit, then the world could be a better place for all. In order to increase awareness in Cocoa Beach, you can put up signs on the island about picking up trash on the island and increase awareness about keeping our waters clean. Mayor Capizzi, didn't you mention on a Facebook post last week that you thought educational signs about littering on the islands would be a great idea?
Indeed, I did. Thank you for your comment. If you haven't figured out, that's my daughter. Any other public comments about items that are not on the agenda? All right, moving forward. Staff reports and announcements.
I just have one thing this evening. As it stands, the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization, TPO, currently consists of the voting delegate is Commissioner Skip Williams, the staff rep is Jared Francis, and the alternate is myself. Jared Francis is leaving us, so I want to appoint Morgan Zolke. She's our engineer in training, and she's been involved in it. She's very interested, and she's doing a great job. So I just want to get it on the agenda, on the minutes, I'm sorry, that I'm appointing her.
Concur by consensus.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
All right, city attorney, reports and announcements.
Okay, I'd like to ask Randy Stevenson to come up. He needs to talk with you, and there wasn't time to get it on the agenda, to extend the beach business licenses until the end of May. They are scheduled to expire at the end of March, but we won't be meeting again until April 3rd.
Thank you, Becky. Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, again, we extended the beach business contracts to the end of March. We're still pursuing discussions and trying to finalize those contracts, as well as some possible modifications to the Code of Ordinances, which is going to take a while. So we're proposing to have an agenda item to you on the April 4th meeting. Want to get it on the record, April 4th meeting, to extend those until the end of May. We don't think it'll take us that long, but we need that time to make sure we do it right. And as somebody once told me today, let's do it right rather than do it twice. So,
Thank you.
I think it would be appropriate to go ahead and make a motion now versus wait until April 4th, which would leave them a gap of doing business, basically, from the 31st to the 4th. So I'd make a motion to go ahead and make that extension at this time and look for a second.
Second.
All right, got a motion and a second to extend the current way it's going. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0.
thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, commission reports, announcements. Anyone? All right.
Yeah, I got some comments. So for those that you haven't been following it, there's ongoing discussions at the county level and the city for lifeguards. So some of the comments certainly are disappointing to me. I think stuff's cherry-picked to steer a narrative. I just want to highlight that it's coming out that Cocoa Beach is not in favor of lifeguards and public safety, and I want to highlight that we have $14 million in our public safety budget. And if you look at our call support services, they're about 50% for tourists. So my rough math is $7 million. We're contributing over and above a comparable size city to host some of that. So I want to get it on record that Cocoa Beach definitely is not against lifeguard, or certainly not against public safety. And just another data point to consider, if you look at Volusia County, they have an over $10 million budget for their ocean rescue. So agreed, or granted, it's managed at the county level, so it's not the same city-county dispute, but they have basically 5 times the budget we do. So I don't think it's a city problem, I think it's a county problem.
Thank you. Anything else?
That's it.
Actually, I can add to some of those statistics. Brevard County makes up about 643,000 residents. Cocoa Beach is only 11,350-ish. We actually pay the highest taxes per capita out of any other city in the county. Almost $3 billion a year in taxable assets. So one could argue that we are definitely paying our share in taxes for county services for safety. Not only that, but our small population, 11,000 compared to the 600,000 people that also use our beaches, I think have the responsibility of helping chip in for the lifeguards. So that being said, you know, the county has an obligation, I believe, and we can't be left holding the bag for that. I wanted to also mention that we will still have lifeguards. We're not going without, so some of that false narrative that's being pushed out there is that we're leaving our beaches unsafe. That's not true. We're still having lifeguards at all of our locations except for Sidney Fisher Park, which we will be putting signs up that say swim at your own risk, no lifeguards on duty. So Coconuts on the beach, we'll still have it there. We'll still have them at Lori Wilson. They'll still be at the pier, and they'll still be at Shepherd. So just so you know, we also have our firefighters are trained and with the highest certifications of lifeguard training as well. So our firefighters will be on call and reactive to any issues that we have. If we see stronger rip currents or anything like that, we're going to obviously watch and put closer attention to that and make sure that people are safe as well. So just to get rid of some of those concerns, public safety is our number one concern, and we're going to do our part to try to continue to keep people safe even when the county does decide to pull back.
Just a follow-up that city staff and Karen and the city manager are going to put out a concise communication tomorrow through CBNN, Facebook, any other means to say where there are lifeguards, what their hours of duties, days of the week are, and where there aren't. So it will be well communicated.
All right. Thank you, guys. Consent agenda.
Okay, this is the consent agenda. Item 1, approve the March 7, 2024 commission meeting minutes. Representative, City Clerk Department, recommendation approved. Item 2 has been removed.
Move to approve consent agenda.
Second.
You got a motion and a second to approve consent agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes 5-0. So item removed, H2.
Okay, this is item H2, review and approve the application form for grandfathering a vessel or waterside accessory structure that exceeds the encroachment limits established by the ordinance and was in existence as of February 15, 2024. Representative Randy Stevenson, Development Services Director, recommendation approved.
Move to approve ordinance 1686.
He pulled it for discussion, but
Yeah,
to discuss it, we need a motion and a second.
Yeah, they pulled it from consent.
That's the mooring ordinance grandfather.
Didn't get a second?
There's no second.
Can you repeat what your motion
I
was?
said move to approve
Motion to approve the grandfather.
ordinance 1686 approved, which is addressing the new regulations for mooring and the, grandfathering.
That's the ordinance number,
Oh,
1686?
well, that was the one that included the grandfathering. Anyway,
What this is the approval of the application form.
Oh, approval of the application form.
Yeah.
I move
Yeah.
to approve the application form.
Because it was already approved. Okay.
I'll second the
Okay,
application.
got a motion and a second to approve the application form. Any comments in the audience? This is concerning mooring grandfathering. Discussion?
Yeah, I know it was a part of the ordinance that was approved. I just want to go on record that this was the component of the ordinance that I didn't like because it was beyond just, we weren't reverting back to what the ordinance used to be. This was added on, so I just want to go on record that
Okay.
I'm up for it. It's already approved in the ordinance, but
Yeah, and I had some concerns with it, and I really appreciated the discussion I got to have with the city on it, that what we're looking at is establishing a baseline, right, with the grandfathering. We didn't have any records, we didn't have any information on what was or was not in compliance, and with this grandfathering, effectively, anybody who's applying for a grandfather status, what they're getting grandfathered will be documented, will be specifically called out and on record. So this is not I'm grandfathered and I've got license to continue with this. It is specifically for the situation you are getting grandfathered, sets a baseline, and then from then on, regardless if you've got grandfather, if you change your status, you come into compliance.
Right.
So that makes me a lot more comfortable.
Right. So a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Aye.
All right,
All opposed?
nay.
Yeah.
Motion passes 3-2. New business.
Unfinished business?
Unfinished.
Oh, unfinished business, sorry about that. Unfinished business.
Okay, item 1, discuss possible modification or elimination of the existing noise ordinance 1678, which was adopted 7/20/2023. Representative Carolyn Wallace, City Commission. Recommendation, discuss.
can we make a comment before we make motion to discuss?
Sure, I will allow it.
Okay. You know, my take on this, and I've gotten phone calls and lots of email communications with folks. And people think that things are better now that this ordinance is in place than they were previously. I think that the overwhelming majority were not in favor of elimination or modification. And if anything, and which isn't part of this motion, they would like to be actually more strict. So, basically, we'd save some time if we just, pass on it for now. But Carolyn, it's at your will to.
So you just commented and discussed without the motion?
I'm just letting them talk. We're gonna go through this whole process. So, so I had a motion, right? Or did I have not? Can we get a motion on this?
I move to discuss.
Okay. And you said you got a second, or no?
Well, do we move to discuss, or do we move to approve it and then
Why don't we do a
have comment
motion
and discussion?
to I guess, we got to do discuss because we don't have anything on the books of what we want to do. So,
Okay. I'll second.
all right, motion and a second to discuss. So, I wanted to say, I want to let you guys definitely get your words out there because I know this is a very concerning topic and I do care about everything that you guys are going to say. But I'm hoping that with our discussion first, we'll talk a lot about it first. It will maybe ease some of your concerns because I don't imagine that we are all on the same page with what you're seeing here, okay? So let me just start off real quick with, I think that the elimination of an ordinance altogether is just absolutely asking for trouble. We have to have some kind of regulation on that. Now, I will say We have been having some problems with some nuisance, in my opinion, some nuisance calls that were repetitive. We might need to modify it a little bit, but not to make it by any means much more lax. I don't believe that. But I would like to hear Jeremy and Caroline's view, because I think these guys are very far between, I would imagine. First, I would like to hear from Caroline, and then Jeremy, and then we'll go out from there. So, because Caroline's the one that brought the ordinance up.
So my main concern with this, and I wasn't saying eliminate a noise ordinance altogether. I was saying, I just want to have a discussion on improving either this one or going back to the one that's actually still on the books that we had before this. We didn't get rid of it. It's ordinance number 1006. And my main issue with this ordinance, it allows one person to repeatedly call and complain and end up shutting down a business inadvertently, and causing business owners to want to sell their business. And they can't run a business that can't be open. And these repeated callers this ordinance allows this to happen. And the people who own these businesses are residents too. So remember that. I hate to see businesses shut down and ruin our downtown. I mean, if you have no economy, what do you got? You got a dead city. These are our own residents investing their own money in businesses to revitalize our downtown and make our city better and better, and provide the live music and the atmosphere that a lot of people like. And I know there's people that don't, but there's a lot of people that do. So that's my main issue, is we have these repetitive callers that have the power now because of what was instated, that's allowing this to happen. And I want some way to stop that, to give these people, these business owners, the ability to run their business as they should.
I'll say in part, I agree with you, but I have a feeling I'm going to in part agree with you as well.
So, I mean, I'm curious, what are the details of 1006? We beat this horse dead for 6 months last summer, and there was never alternative, so we kind of took what I proposed initially. So I'm curious I haven't done that research, I'm not familiar with that. At high level, what is the benefit or the asset of having that ordinance? My understanding, what was on the books referenced phonographs from the 60s, so I don't think.
It allows people there's limitations in it to still complain if they have to, but not this distance limit and times that give chronic complainers teeth to let these citations happen.
So I've got a briefing if there's no other details, but pulling on that thread is the ordinance that's on the books for the day with a distance and plainly audible is what was on the books and currently on the books for nights. All we did was take what worked and widely recognized at night and applied it during the day. So I don't think we radically changed anything. It just.
I will say we did add a 500.
Verbiage
We
of
had a
plainly
500 foot. We did add a 500-foot component to it.
Agreed. But in terms of the distance and time, that's the legal standard that an attorney says is legally enforceable. I wouldn't do anything that's not legally enforceable. I think that's more ambiguous.
But that in turn caused this issue we're having, where these businesses are having to shut down because of those citations, because of those distances.
The data that I saw, I've got a chart in my deck in here. It looked like there was only one citation issued in the last 8 months that was on the police records of 162 records.
Is this your,
Yeah, that was from the data that was mined from September to March of this year. 162 complaints and there was one citation issued.
Yeah.
Unless I read that wrong.
No, you didn't. I actually studied this quite a bit, not as nicely put out as you did, but.
I'll walk through these.
You want to walk through it, and then we can kind of analyze that as we go here.
Okay, so it's just a breakdown of, like I said, thank you, Chief, for providing this data. Have a good data set that we can analyze. So July, it's a period of performance, July to March, 161 noise complaints. Believe it or not, residential, neighbor to neighbor, was 36% of them. So 58 of them are not going to go away. It's not going to shut down businesses. The top 3 commercial sources, Salty Sisters, 142, and Island Time, those counts next door is how many calls they had. Interestingly enough, Coconuts and Beak Shack absolutely had 0. There's the raw data on the right side if you want to see it, but I want all this in public record. But the Coconuts and Beak Shack was quite surprising because they're 2 of the most popular joints, and they had 0
But
calls.
they're enclosed.
Maybe that's the problem. The next one's the breakdown of the complaint details. So those are the top 3. I didn't want to call out my neighbors, so I just call them caller A, B, C, D, and E. The takeaway here, so by color, the majority of people are anonymous, so I don't know how we can mine it and say that it's a repeated caller. If you look at, let's just take caller A, they called on Salty Sisters 4 times. Again, I think the one citation was actually issued against Salty Sisters.
Can I ask you something real quick?
Sure.
While you're on it? So these A, B, C, D, all the callers all the way to F, are you saying these are the habitual callers, basically?
No, those are unique callers that, so caller A called 4 times against Salty Sisters in Area 142 once. But I don't want to call them out by name.
Yeah,
so they're
right, but
just
then-
unique individuals.
But what you're saying also is a caller F called Island Time, obviously.
Caller F is
6
actually a complex, so that's hard to, it's a
There's, I
large
believe,
unit
there's
complex,
2,
yeah, so it's,
predominantly 1 person, but there's 2 people that I think might call there.
I can't say that definitively, it's just by address, and
Yeah, so I
it's
was,
probably 60 individuals at that address. So the takeaway here, I don't think you can claim there's harassment. I don't think it's conclusive enough to say that with the anonymous counts. The next slide. Again, like I said, what's widely accepted and recognized and legal for what was on the books for years at night, we've just applied that to the daytime. We talked about changing the thresholds. We settled on 500 feet. That was, we had several discussions on that. I potentially could be open to that, but I don't know. I think, like I said, we beat this horse last summer pretty bad. There's a narrative that it stops outdoor music. I think that's, again, it's almost like what Tobias is doing at the county level. It's not. It's just saying contain your stuff. I mean, it's noise pollution when you think about it. Interesting thing, the short-term rental, they actually have a different ordinance that's significantly restricted. And if you want to talk about businesses, a short-term rental is a business. So are we going to shut them down too? So we got to be careful what we ask for. Is if you read the short-term rental noise ordinance, it says basically no noise outside the property. And then my takeaway bullet there, if you start the 3 hot buttons that we're dealing with in 2024, short-term rentals, noise, and lifeguard funding, it's basically asking residents to relinquish our rights to privacy, to peace, to funding lifeguards, and I'm just not for that. We're a residential town, and if you want to go to the next chart, you can see what really set this all off, and I'll just let you guys consume that.
well, obviously, this was absolutely,
I've got video here if you want to hear it.
Sound. That has nothing to do with noise.
well, it was loud.
I've got a video
It
from
was
2,000 feet
loud.
away, I'd gladly play it.
It was loud, and this was absolutely out of hand. I will agree with that one. I don't even think we really need to go there. We all know that that's not acceptable. So,
But is it though? I mean,
no, it's absolutely not.
It's pornographic speech, it's not protected. So without the ordinance, it was
The
thought to be
ordinance doesn't
acceptable.
stop that.
Say again?
The ordinance doesn't stop that. Any band in any bar can play that. That ordinance does not stop that. But I remember back in, December or January when I brought up to discuss this, and we had businesses come up and talk about their issues that I'm talking about again, and you said you were willing to help and discuss it, and now you're saying you're not.
Well, he did just say he might be willing to talk
Yeah,
about it.
Okay, that's fine. Well, that's what I wanted to do is discuss. I mean, I have instances where my band was playing at Salty Sisters. We played lower than acoustic active, and they were getting calls. To me, that's harassment, and it's happened several times, and they've had to shut down for other bands too, where like they were shut down on days where like another band another week didn't get called on. So what is the rhyme or reason to that? And it is repeat, it's a repeat. I know there's somebody on Azalea that keeps calling. I wouldn't.
You're trying to keep it anonymous?
Hey, I'm
No,
calling,
I
don't know.
assure
Yeah.
you it's not me.
So
You live on
I'm
Azalea.
not saying it's you. I know it's not you.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have brought it up if it wasn't being brought up to me that this is a problem and they're struggling. So I'm not just saying, I didn't vote for this new ordinance. I didn't agree to it. So And I stated that we'd have these problems that we are having with these businesses. And they are coming and saying they are having these problems. So that's why I'm bringing it up. Otherwise, I wouldn't bother. You
So
guys settled
what
on
are,
it, so.
what are, the emails we get are overwhelmingly not in favor of it. So what are you hearing in terms of ways to relieve this or to improve this?
I've heard people that don't email us, people who
No, I understand, but I mean,
email.
what are the suggestions
I've
of?
heard they didn't want, I've heard a lot of people say they were angry about this, that they're mad that this infringes on their live music and their entertainment, and they were angry about this. A lot of people around town, they don't necessarily email, but a large portion of the climate feels that way, because they enjoy going downtown and enjoying, especially on the weekends, these venues, and it infringes on their, and these are all residents of Cocoa Beach, including the business owners who are residents.
When you guys are done, I'm actually going to speak in your favor and in your favor. I think I'm going to try to bridge the gap here. But does anybody else want to say? I want to do public comment, but I want the public to understand how we feel so that they can understand without getting too outraged first and hearing a bunch of meanness.
Mayor, after you're done, I
Yeah,
have some
I want
thoughts.
to hear you. And then I want to kind of like
One more
bridge the
closing
gap.
thought.
Well, and it's not drastically different, I think, from where you're going potentially. I agree. There was strong support from the community to say, please do not lessen it. Do not take away the noise ordinance. But I think what we've heard is that it's difficult to enforce, it's difficult to measure, and for our businesses, it's difficult to self-police. For any business that wants to comply, or any band that wants to comply, how do you know, right? And I think that's where, with what we set, we took a good step in the right direction, and we've got positive feedback from the community on that. However, there were some pitfalls, right? Some pitfalls from an enforceability standpoint, and I think we've got to take another step. And so the things that need improvement is when I don't think we should have a situation where one person can shut down a business, right? And we may not even be seeing that, but I think we can all agree it shouldn't be that. So we've got to be careful to at least be thoughtful in that direction. And then in terms of the ability for a business with goodwill to self-enforce, right? How do I know? And so one of the things I was talking about with the city was the idea building on the 100 and 500 feet, but measuring at the source. So starting to establish from the source, what is audible at 500 feet? What is audible at the 100 feet? But it's got to be starting to set standards at the source, because weather, temperature, cloud cover, all these things affect the ability to transmit sound, right? And so once, 1 decibel level that's being played a given day, like Carolyn was saying, it could be audible at one day and not audible another day. And unless you're doing perimeter searches, you're not going to know. So I think what we need to do is adjust our measurement and controls to measure at the source based on what becomes a standard of 500 feet audible, right? So that would be my recommendation.
You have anything you want to add? Okay. All right, so Carolyn brought up some good points, and I think some of this data is a little bit skewed because we've had some differences of a changing of the guards during some part of this. So we discussed in the beginning, if this wasn't working, we would consider coming back and altering it to make it work, right? So that's kind of where we're at right now. Not because we want to. I don't think really any of us really want to eliminate it altogether. I think even Carolyn isn't really in favor of totally getting rid of it. I would say, but
I'm not saying we shouldn't.
you want to
have
be
an
you want to be
ordinance for it.
reasonable, right?
So that's exactly what prompted me to put this analysis together. When I saw the word eliminate,
Yeah.
that's a hard no. For sure.
So there is an issue when we look at this data where we do have people, and I have talked to business owners. There, at each location, there's a majority calls from a specific person creating a bigger issue, and sometimes it even seems almost like calling out of spite. So we need to take that into consideration.
How do we know that?
Well, if you had multiple calls from multiple people on
the same
night, then you would say that's a legitimate complaint. But if it's the same person calling over and over and nobody else is, that's something to consider. So that's one thing.
That's in the data set, though.
You know, I think that our main problem that we've had is defining clearly audible. Because, like I said, changing of the guards, the previous police chief didn't really have a definition. He just said, if you can hear it whatsoever, that's clearly audible, which I think we can all agree that that is absolutely not clearly audible. Speaking with the new police chief, I think, you know, clearly audible should be something that you can clearly hear what they're saying. I think clearly audible means not that I can faintly hear something in a distance. I think it needs to be, like you said, measurable, something that you can actually identify that is clearly audible. So if it was a song and you hear the beat and you say, and I could pick that beat out from anywhere, you know, bad boys, you know, that was one of the ones actually, Inner Circle. You can't necessarily call that clearly audible because it's easy to pick the beat out. It would have to be something where you would know, like for example, the guy's on the mic and he's saying something and you know what he's saying without already anticipating what he's going to say. So I think that is probably a definition of clearly audible. It's something that we would consider.
So if you're saying that clearly audible has to be where you can actually hear and understand the words to make it clearly audible. So there's plenty of music that has no words that you could beat out as loud as you wanted to, and you wouldn't consider that clearly audible?
As long as you're mumbling.
No, I mean, obviously, this is like a baseline. This is something to take it.
It has to include both. It can't be just, if I can't, because you get people up there that you can't understand anyway.
I think we've got to
I think you understand where I'm going with this, though. You're kind of
Well, I know, but
nitpicking, but
Becky actually has looked up.
Exactly.
clearly audible.
There's legal spaces for
Yeah,
this.
okay. I studied this ordinance, and I think one of the issues that makes it problematic is section B3. It says the officers need not determine the particular words or phrases being produced or the name of any song or artist producing the noise. For example, the detection of a rhythmic bass, reverberating type noise is sufficient to constitute a plainly audible noise. And I think that that's probably overreaching.
I think you're correct. I think that.
I think if that
way
were-
too
I-
subjective. The same sound, the same transmission, wind blowing that way, I can't hear it over there. Wind switches. And so we've got to get to a more measurable, because for our businesses, if they can't self-police, because I can't tell one day to the next that the same audio settings are illegal and then legal. That's not a predictable, that's not an appropriate environment for them to have to operate in. So we've got to get beyond, I personally believe, the very subjective kind of subjective perspective.
And you said, Becky, that you didn't feel like a decibel meter was a.
I think I'd like to have the police chief come up and talk about that.
Okay.
You know, they have to be calibrated, and you have to take the background noise, which if you have continuous music, it's hard to get the background noise without the music.
Yeah.
And
Three bands in a general vicinity.
three bands in a general vicinity is going to be problematic. They're very expensive devices, and I don't know how many we would get and how many people would be trained on them, but I think probably the chief could
And
address
recall, we
it.
started on exactly that context, and we kind of
Yeah.
diverged from that to the plainly audible legal standard.
So I will say that I have gone around with business owners with decibel meters, and it was clear to tell whose music was what by the lyrics and when the decibel would go up. So it actually is something that does work from what I've seen in person, but I would like to hear from the chief because he's the one that's going to be enforcing this.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. So let me say first and foremost that I'm not an expert on decibel meters. And Becky and I have worked together for a while, and I've always kind of taken the way that the ordinance is now as a much simpler way to go rather than a decibel meter, only because they do have to be calibrated so often and they have to be certified and we have to take those to court or to the magistrate and then present them as evidence. And there are complications that I can educate myself on more if actually needed, but I don't think it's needed at this point. And here's kind of where I'm at, is there is a middle ground here that can be found, and it just takes us to be reasonable, right? And it starts with the police department. So I think the best way for this to proceed, in our view as a department, is to just use a little common sense, right? So the distance and the clearly audible are the two issues that you all know that I've had with, if there's going to be any change made, any change at all made, it would be, in my view, to back up the distance and change the clearly audible definition, to Becky's point, to something more clearly defined, because we all can hear bass and speakers from a quarter mile away. Motorcycles, you know, I mean, there's a lot of noise that we can hear from a long way away. So I think the vibration in and of itself, Commissioner Williams, while I completely agree with you that instrumental music is a problem, I never even considered that until you said it. But in and of itself should not constitute clearly audible in my view, okay? And I'm not an attorney, but I do understand your point, and it's a very good one. I think that it should be the job of the police department to ensure that both sides of this argument are as happy as they can be for as long as they can be. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is we need to be reasonable on our side as a department and try and gain compliance to a reasonable degree from the business, while at the same time holding the complainants accountable for fraudulent or incredulous complaining, right? So Commissioner Willis, to your point, on the anonymous, right? That's really not legal now. And Becky can speak to that, but you can't be anonymous on these type of complaints anymore. So frequently what we have are the same callers calling again and again and again and again and again, but they don't want to have their name mentioned, and they don't want to be in reports. Well, if they don't want to be in reports and they don't want to have their name mentioned, we have no complaint for law, unless I'm wrong on that, but I believe that's...
No, there's a relatively new state statute that does not allow code enforcement anonymous complaints to be acted upon.
Mm-hmm. So to kind of take this pressure off the commission a little bit, we have only had one citation, and just for public record, that citation was dropped by the magistrate when the complainant didn't show to the hearing. So the business ultimately was not affected, okay, monetarily anyway, for that citation. So there's a lot of steps that have to happen along the way for a business to actually be cited and be found guilty, if you will, okay? It is not the job of the police department to make businesses go out of business, and it's not the job of the police department to have our citizens miserable from noise, right? What we have to do is find a middle ground as a department. What does that mean? Specifically, that means us going to the business and saying, look, if we respond to a residence and we think it sounds loud, we have body cams, we think it sounds too loud. It sounds crazy loud. We can hear it. It's our definition of clearly audible, subjective to that officer. We then have to have another officer at the business if we can't see it line of sight, right? And that officer, per the ordinance, has to also tell us, what are they playing? Well, they're playing Vanilla Ice. Don't laugh at me. Vanilla Ice. And then Vanilla Ice, and then, okay, so it is Vanilla Ice. So it is this X business, right? So then we've actually got the business identified. Hey, can you turn it down? Yes, we'll turn it down. Then we leave. Problem over. If they don't turn it down, or they choose not to turn it down, hey, we're saying it's loud. The cops are saying it's loud. We are telling you this is loud. You haven't turned it down. Please turn it down. We're asking you again to please turn it down. Okay? They can choose to comply or not comply at that time. We need to make it very difficult rather than very easy to cite the businesses, in my view. But ultimately, there is a point in time where the businesses should be cited, okay? And if they're cited, we need the backing of this commission that, hey, you have to have the faith that the police department did it in good faith. We have our body cams activated, and the magistrate will decide at the end of the day what the results of that case are going to be, right? Ultimately, it's going to be an independent body making that actual judgment. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be you. It's going to be an independent magistrate who hears both sides of the story, and a reasonable expectation or outcome will prevail. That's what the system is. That's why we pay the magistrate to do this job. So I don't believe that any egregious unfair activities are going to happen. If the magistrate hears it and says it's unreasonable, then they'll get fined. If the magistrate doesn't agree, then they won't get fined. But that's the beauty of the system that we have here. So I don't really believe we're far off here. It's just in the enforcement, in my view. Does that help?
Yeah. Thank
Does that
you.
make sense? You guys have any questions for me?
Just,
Yes, sir.
Merriam-Webster would say audible is a voice, and a lightning bolt, thunder, are both audible.
Mm-hmm.
Audible isn't just voice.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't, motorcycles are audible. You know what I mean? So, but just have a little faith in the police department. I'm sorry?
Snoring is audible.
It is audible, yes,
Talk
sir.
to my wife.
So I don't think there needs to be the pressure on the commission to make this call. We haven't had an influx of citations. You know what I mean? And if businesses are getting affected, we can be reasonable on both sides of the equation. Okay, but that's just my thought. We're here to help you, so.
Chief, I think, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
So, and this might be a absolutely terrible, metaphor association, but I think about it in terms of driving to work, right? And if there were no posted speed limit and I get pulled over every day because it seems too fast, right? And I don't have a way to utilize some tool, a speedometer on my dash, right?
Yeah.
That says, I know what the speed limit is. I know how to measure and enforce myself. So I am confident I'm abiding with the law, right? And when I'm not, I know exactly what I broke. I know what I did, and I'm accountable for that. But even if I got pulled over every day and I didn't get a ticket, or when I did, I went to the magistrate and they were like, but it's the getting pulled over each day and the stress of that. And then when I do have to go to the magistrate, it's, even if it gets dismissed, I've got to take my day off work.
I get it.
I think that's the part I'm struggling with.
It is subjective when you don't have the decibel meters. The objectivity is lessened to a degree in one way, but it's increased, the subjectivity is increased in another way in that there are outside factors influencing the decibel meter itself, okay? So that is a balance. Commissioner Willis actually brings up a good point. We don't have to necessarily go back to the old ordinance, but what if, like our past practice was that we had more than one complaint? We couldn't even take action if we didn't have one. Is it really bad enough? One option is that we could do two. That's another option, right? So there are steps that we can take without having to turn this into like where it's all on you guys. I mean, we can bend too, and we can be reasonable as police and enforcement. But when somebody deserves a ticket, it's going to be that they really deserve it. And the magistrate will eventually, decide or not. But we should make it hard for these businesses to get written, but at the same time, they should respect us enough when we say turn it down, it's clearly plainly audible to stop.
What does the magistrate decide against? The ordinance or some other Florida statutes? Or
They judge the ordinance. They judge whether the evidence presented to him or her at that time matches, in their view, that I guess it would be the subject business violated the ordinance. And if a magistrate who we pay, who is an independent arbiter, says, yeah, I think so, sometimes they'll say no. But we will make it hard to do. Like, we don't want to make it easy to write those things. We want to give the businesses every opportunity to comply and thrive and make money.
My concern is if in the future we had another chief or somebody else that doesn't see it as, being understanding with the businesses and the residents, how that we could have this problem again, which is why I think defining it a little better. Now, I was, that night, actually, that she's referring to, the Salty Sisters night or that you referred to as with the fine. I was actually there that night. It wasn't that loud.
You're on the police report. Is Capizzi dispositioned or something?
Was I?
Yeah. Well, the notes are in there.
So, because I was upset, because I was like, they shut this business down at 7 o'clock in the afternoon. And you know that my dad is absolutely, crazy about sound. And he's like, they've been really good lately. So, this Salty Sisters and one Island Time, with talking with the businesses and looking at the reports, absolutely, we have people that are trying to weaponize the ordinance to take down a business.
So if that's true, then if that's true, and I know who you're referring to, and then, well, one of those residences is not found to be now in the distance requirement. Okay? So that's out now on one of them. Secondly, you could add a second complainant to make it not seem so, malicious. And as far as, it sounded all good in my head when I said that stuff to you guys a few minutes ago, but at the same time, if I'm honest with you, the other side of that equation is I don't want to put the officers in a bad spot, right? So we have to, my trick is we have to have something clear enough on our side, instructions to the officers to use common sense to make it very difficult and give the businesses every opportunity to comply, while at the same time trusting them to use their best judgment in that and letting the evidence speak for itself on the back end of the day. And that's where I am.
Thank you. So I'm going to do public comment. Don't worry.
Mayor, I have one,
go ahead.
one final question, if I may.
Yes, please.
Chief, if we were to move in a direction where we kept the officer or the procedure that you described, it's still the final arbiter of whether a citation is issued or not, but added that there needs to be 2 or more complaints for it to be something we respond to, and then established not as a mode of enforcement, but just as a general expectation, a reasonable decibel level, not one that would then get subjected as the basis for the citation, but something that would allow that, yeah, that's about where we're going to say, guys, you got to turn it down, so that it was something that the businesses could meaningfully measure and say, oh, okay, yeah, we're getting close to that. Something that would give them an approximate zone where they know, hey, if the police come, that's about where they're going to tell us, even though it is not something.
Yeah, like use it in conjunction where it sets you off to say, all right, we need to start getting the guy out there to hear.
But you're still, and whatever the commission chooses, we will do, but you're still bringing in decibel levels, which means you're still bringing in the same problem that we have at the beginning, which is in order to get out there, we have to have a complainant, right? And then we have to still have those instruments measured and calibrated and certified, and then we have other noise considerations that I can look into further. But I mean, that's the other side of the, I'm not saying it's unreasonable, right? But I mean, ultimately, to use your speeding example, I get that if one officer says that you're speeding, and that could be subjective, but what if 2 say you were? Or what if 3 say you were, right? So if you have more complainants, that takes away the subjectivity to a degree, in my opinion.
And it could even be decibel meter owned by the establishment themselves, just so they know when they're getting close.
Whatever you guys
Okay.
say.
And some of them already have those.
Yeah.
They use them to kind of
So
say, okay, we're, I'll say one more thing about decibel meters and clearly audible. At 8:30 in the morning, if I'm home on a weekday at 58 Westview Lane, I could take dictation on the high school announcements that come over the loudspeaker, okay?
Yeah.
But the decibel level isn't high. Right. But it's clearly audible. Okay? When they're having a football game and the band's playing and it plays on the west side of the stadium where the student section is, it's clearly audible and it's rather loud. But am I gonna shut down a high school band at a football game because I don't like to hear the noise? You know, there's gotta be some subjectivity.
I mean, I can
There.
clearly hear what's going on at the high school from Publix, my house behind Publix, which is pretty far away.
Well, I think
Right,
that's,
but it's not, it's audible, but the decibel level, you put a decibel meter out there, you get about 20.
all right, so the complement to that is the frequency of these occurrences, right? We talked about Friday Fest, it gets almost universal support, and they blast the music, I think the community loves that, but it's once a month.
Yeah.
It's not every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and that's what prompted all this.
Yeah. And I'll
So to
say,
that point is, we were going down the route of this special events, where it was a cap, we blew through that, we were rewriting, it's just like a whole gray area, but that was supposed to be the complement to limit the frequency of these big events like that.
I'm kind of on the same idea with Chief is, I do think we need to maybe look at least 2 complaints for it to be something legit so that one person can't shut down a business. I would be open to expanding the distance a little bit to maybe get rid of some of these nuisance complaints. And then also, in my opinion, we need to define clearly audible a little better. But that's obviously subject to what I hear from you guys as well. So if you guys want, we can start with public comment. So anybody want to kind of kick that off? Name, address, and let's keep it with 3 minutes because we got a lot of people.
Rick Anderson, 1800 Minutemen Causeway. I think it's important to remember that for many years we had a large number of businesses and there was never a problem. And then one business came in and caused a big problem. It was a really emotional issue, and I understand it. And the complaints against that one business were legitimate. That one business is gone now. So I think that it's important to remember that it was passed at a highly emotional point, and I think that anything that's passed that way is going to be inherently flawed. I like Commissioner Jackson's, and I'm not a sound engineer, but if there was a source measurement, I'd be all in favor of something like that, but it's just too subjective the way it's written. The decibels are just an imperfect way to measure sound. As Commissioner Jackson said, the wind blows one way, the wind blows the other way. So, I mean, I think that we need to get it right. And I think the businesses need some sort of stability so that they won't be facing this uncertainty every time they put a band on the stage. I don't think it's fair to them. Yeah. So I can't quite go along with eliminating it, but I'm also not a fan of passing laws that are simply unenforceable because they're too vague and there are too many variables.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. And it really was a pretty, it was a very emotional time for the city when we did do that vote, so I do agree. Anybody else?
Good evening, Tim Tumulty, 60-year-old resident of Cocoa Beach. There's a lot of issues at hand here. From my recollection of this noise ordinance that started a year ago, the complaints, as I recall, were 28 complaints from one person, 3 total from everyone else.
There was a lot.
I look back.
But yeah.
But that started it. That's what started it.
Right.
So it came from one person, basically, and that's from 142. So, that's just the way it is, and that's what happened. It caused a lot of contestation between Area 142 and the commission because of all the other, now more people came up and were voicing their opinion. I believe, Commissioner Hutcherson, you're conflating the issue with the verbiage that you had up there. I don't agree with the verbiage of Buck Cherry, and it's not something I would listen to or condone, but it is a First Amendment right of them to say what they want. Just as we have a strip club in Cocoa Beach that uses the First Amendment right to be a strip club in Cocoa Beach. And we can't get rid of them, and that's an issue above and beyond. A word that may be added, I'm not sure, I don't have the whole verbiage of the ordinance, but continuous, if the word continuous was in there, I'm not sure that it is. Chief Mullins nailed it. I think the commission had a knee-jerk reaction last year and just went wild with this noise ordinance and created all the issues between 142 and then it wasn't just 142, now it became every business in Cocoa Beach that had to comply to this ordinance that they didn't really understand. It's not really clear. And, you know, that's where we are now. So I don't know that anything has changed here other than the fact that Chief Mullins has said, and it's pretty much cleared it up for me, in that, hey, you're a little loud, so we got a complaint, so we come to your residence or we come to your business, whatever it may be, it could be either one, and we say, hey, turn your music down. You know, we got a complaint. If I have to come again, you know, I'm going to be a little bit more stern, and you may get a citation. And that should handle it. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
When we keep saying this stuff about only one person complaining and you need at least two, I don't think that's going to work because you get two people in one house and one person calls, oh no, it has to be two complaints. The other person calls. You know, now you got two complaints. You got the same problem coming from the same place.
Same address.
But
You have your neighbor call.
or whatever, but I don't think that's the solution. I think it's up to the discretion of the police officers. But in that, I mean, I could read them to you one right after the other off my phone, the emails I got, and there's more than one person complaining about the current noise ordinance and how it's enforced. There's way more than one person complaining about it. Most people are saying, don't eliminate it and don't change it. But there's other people that are complaining about it just the way it is, saying it just, they can't live in their homes anymore on, back in the neighborhoods behind Salty Sisters and such. So, it's not just one person complaining, whether they want to pick up the phone and go on a police record or not. But there is public record of all the emails that came to this commission that Karen has, and there's more than one person complaining about the current noise ordinance not being strict enough. And therefore, I'm not in favor of making any changes.
Okay, and I actually do want to go on record to say that I was working with 142 at the time, and they were bending over backwards to try to make changes, and towards the end there, they did get it right, in my opinion. They were working well with us. So I do want to give them kudos for that. I don't think it's fair to beat up on them. In the beginning, definitely it was out of hand, but I think as a business, I was very proud of them for trying to work with us and make a difference. So I just want to say, even though it changed and all that, hands and all that, I just feel like I owe it to them to at least acknowledge that. Any other public comments? Yeah.
Adrian Dillon, 125 Hernando Lane, Cocoa Beach, and the property is about 500 feet from the Sandbar and Captain Jay's. Of recent, I haven't had any difficulties with their music, but in the past, especially when they had their bands playing on the west side of their buildings, pointing towards Ocean Beach Boulevard, it was just incredible. I don't know the science of acoustics, but their synthesized bass, the boom, 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 boom. In my bedroom in my house, it was louder than if I stepped outside. And so I couldn't sleep at night if they were doing the boom, 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 boom. Is there any way we could consider to only allow that in a fully enclosed building? If you're going to play music outside, you have to play musical instruments. You know, musical instruments and lyrics wouldn't be a problem, but it's that synthesized bass that drove me nuts. So I know it's difficult to ban stuff, but I think you could certainly say, okay, if you want that, it has to be in a fully enclosed building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comment on that. So thanks for bringing that up. Great point. So that was one of the discussions we had initially was having a sound analysis. And that was the findings for, I think Island Time was the one that had one done in 2019 or so. And that was the takeaway is those large bass noises transmit through a lot of structure. And that was their takeaway, is build structure to absorb that. So I don't think we needed to do a new analysis, just leverage the findings that they had from that initial one. That's exactly what they said. The theme of that whole report.
We didn't do a sound analysis of downtown. It only was.
Fair point, but I mean, the takeaway from that analysis was it's these loud, low bass noises, and I'll leave it at that.
And I don't think we need to spend money on an analysis to understand what's loud and what's not loud, right?
Well, no, I don't agree, because we don't really, there's a lot of factors downtown. You've got the garage, you've got a lot of buildings at different heights, you've got the ocean, you've got the canals, which is water. There's a lot of factors that change sound levels and how sound carries throughout the day. So unless you have an analysis of what really goes on, how do you know what you're working with?
Because it could be different today as it is
Well, and
tomorrow.
that's why you do
depending
an
on
analysis
wind.
on different days in different conditions, and you find that out. And that's why I still think I agree with what Tim said. It was a knee-jerk reaction of what was put in place last summer. We didn't have an analysis done. We didn't know what, and it did end up having problems with this. So I want to go back to doing a sound analysis before we anything, so we know what we're working with. And that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay.
I would say from an engineering and scientific and controlled experiment analysis aspect, that to capture all the different scenarios and changes, wind direction, how high the cloud cover is, the humidity in the air, there's too many variables, the temperature, you're going to do analysis at every temperature from 37 degrees to 103. You'll be doing analysis forever. So you're never going to have a complete analysis. So I don't think that it's worth spending any money on doing an analysis.
Not to mention we don't have the money. So any other public comment?
Hello, Elise Komochuk, 24 North Brevard Avenue. And
Tiffany Martin, 24 North Brevard Avenue. Salty Sisters, hey.
Hello. I definitely want to say that we do not want to break the law ever. I agree with everything that the police chief was saying, that I think that it should be to where we all kind of have a understanding together. I liked how he was saying that if one of us were at our building, and then they could be somewhat to see if it was reasonable, if, you know what I mean, if they agreed to. We actually put sound barrier things, actually, so that we would be complying. I'm not sure if, since the last time that we did have a complaint way back where we were saying, I'm not sure, I don't think that there has been another one since.
Seems to have made a difference.
I'm sorry?
It seems to have made a difference.
Excellent. And so, like, that's kind of where I like how you were also saying that it's good to know exactly what, so we can self-police it as well. Like, we used to be like, we would sit inside the office, and if we could hear the band from there, then we were like, okay, we need to go outside and tell them to turn it down. And so it was good because then we would know this is not okay. Do you know what I mean? So we would always try to comply with what we thought was okay.
And then what ended up happening was certain bands were getting more calls. For example, I'll be honest, Carolyn's band gets called, the first note she plays, her band gets called. And I've had a band where they played pretty loud, and I fired them. I said, you guys play way too loud. Can you turn down? He straight up told me no, and I said, get off the stage. You can't play here, because I'm trying to comply with the residents. We love the residents of Cocoa Beach. They support us so much. And so certain bands do play louder, and we get rid of them. Caroline's band will play so low, it's laughable, and she will get a call. That's why we know certain people are biased against her. Not where I want to fire Caroline, but like, it's hard to even want to have her band play because we know we're going to get a call if it's Caroline. That being said, the ticket did get dismissed when we got shut down at 7:30, and the person that was calling all the time against us, she started calling up the restaurant instead, and then I was able to, okay, turn down, instead of even getting the police involved. We will turn down no matter what. We just want the opportunity to be able to turn down without them just saying, flick off the music, here's your citation. And that's all we're asking for, which I think we've all discussed tonight, and it seems like that's what's going to happen, so.
But I agree with what, you guys also mentioned too, when you hear Friday Fest, it's like, okay, well, we're obviously nowhere near as loud as Friday Fest. So it's like, so what is the clearly
audible?
You know what I mean? What is our clearly audible, expectation?
It's actually plainly audible.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, Jeremy, you're the one that actually is closest to hear that. So I guess I could be speaking out of turn. My dad lives just the street before you, so.
We're an hour and a half into the week. I could go all night on this, but it's like.
Any other public comment?
Yeah, I mean.
No other public comment? So guys, do you want to try to modify this at all to try to make it a little bit more easier for the police, as far as maybe adding an element of maybe a second complaint, so that one person can't just shut a place down?
I tell you what, instead of us trying to make a final decision, why don't we just, for the time being, defer to the city attorney and the city manager and the police chief to put their heads together and bring back a recommendation to the commission, versus us kind of battling out, do this, do that, decibel meter, we could go on for another hour and a half.
And we really possibly could take care of the problem without actually changing the ordinance, because the police department, they have discretion on everything. They have discretion on whether they can give you a speeding ticket at 7 miles an hour or 15 miles an hour over the limit. And that's internal to the police department, what they do, and whether they're going to respond to one complaint if it's somebody who keeps calling, or if they're going to, wait and see if somebody from a different address calls. They can do that within their own police department.
My main concern, though, is if we don't have someone like Wes where cooler heads prevail, what if we have somebody else in there that, like last time, the reason why we started getting actually all these complaints, because they did when we had a different chief.
No, I get that. And I believe the internal instructions that they had then was if they got a second call in one night, even if it was the same person,
right,
didn't really matter how loud it was, they went and shut them down. And that, I think that that was an improper thing because that was not in accordance with the ordinance. So, and frankly, if our current chief is no longer there and we start having problems again, then we can address it at that point. I mean, we've got a level-headed chief now.
And the thing is, we're not all going to be sitting up here, the five of us, obviously. Wayne's not going to be here forever. Becky's not going to be here forever. Wes isn't going to be here forever. So if we have a different police chief that has a different take on how to apply the city ordinances, that's basically between him and the city manager and the city attorney and the next commission to work out. And we shouldn't be worried about it at this time.
You make a great point, actually. And I'm okay with that as long as we keep Wes around to make sure all this is.
All right, so we're going with no change at this point unless you guys, the city manager and the city attorney and Wes have an epiphany and come up with a way to make this better.
Well, I'd like to specifically ask that you guys look into, one, smart ways to address, how, and Becky, I think you started hitting on it, address the single complaint, right? How do we ensure that regardless of who's sitting here and who's in individual seats, that one person can't take a business hostage, right? And I think we all agree on that. And then how to generally communicate to a business roughly what the speed limit is, right? Now, again, it's going to be subject to the police, but what type of levels are we talking about, and especially at base levels, right? So if it's the SPL meter weighted for C, I'm just doing a little research real quick, but it sounds like there are ways to give them kind of a general area. So if we could learn a little bit more about that, and especially focus on base tones, it sounds like that might be a way to improve.
And then I think we have a general consensus with at least three of us that we wouldn't really be opposed if there was two complaints that would make sense.
That sounds like one option, but yeah, I think asking them to
She's
look
saying that
into
the
it.
police department has a discretion.
They do, I'm just saying.
If they have the same, but
just
you,
making it out
okay,
there.
so you say two, you put numbers in there, you say two.
Why not three?
It's complaint or complaints.
We're gonna leave it as
Plural,
is.
but if you make it two, then all of a sudden you get two and you go, well, that's not enough, let's make it three. Let's just not go, I
I just
don't
want
think
to
we
see
should
that
go there.
there's something that does not allow chronic complainers. Shut down a business for the evening.
Well, that's
Yeah,
what,
what
we'll let
I would
that,
like
leave
to-
that to the police department's discretion in enforcing our ordinances.
I trust Wes to do what's right in this situation, so I will concede, but I do agree with you, Caroline. So at this point, just for the sake of not drawing this out for another hour, we'll close this item.
Are we gonna get like a report back from,
What
is
would
there
you
like,
like?
could we get like some kind of report or summary or something, like on an agenda item or something?
That's what I
What's the
asked
best
them to
way?
do, is put their heads together and.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I said that with your putting your heads together, there is a consensus that we'd be okay with that as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Let's see. We're at new business.
Yes, okay, this is item K1, new business. Approve the scope of services for engineering and design and fee estimates totaling $185,040 from Kimley Horn to design rehabilitation improvements for lift station number 3 under task order number 2, lift station number 6 under task order number 3, and lift station 15 under task order 4. The engineering and design for this project is a budgeted item this fiscal year. Representative Brad Calzo, Water Reclamation Director, recommendation approved.
Move to approve K1 as written.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any public comment? All right, all in favor?
I have a comment real quick.
Yeah.
So Brad, a question, easy one. So first of all, great job. I think he does, in terms of detail of estimates, phenomenal. So kudos to that in terms of all the supporting data. Is this item, actually we can cover them all, 1, 2, and 3, are they all have any kind of recurring cost? And do we have that built into our forecast going forward, like maintenance or service or?
I think the recurring cost might just be your standard O&M.
And you would build that in your budget?
Correct.
Okay, because where I'm going with that is I come from that background where nothing gets approved just as a one-time expense. You have to have a plan for all the follow-ons so that the city can really get a better idea. Because for me personally, I don't want to see things that are unbudgeted, oh, we've got this emergency expense type thing. So I'm trying to wean us off of that if we can get better forecasting. But
Our other operational accounts will cover any parts that we need for any of that. This is just the major stuff.
okay, awesome. Thank you, though. Good detail on all three of them. Thank you.
All right. Any other council comment? All right. All in favor?
Did you ask for public comment?
Yeah, I already did.
I'm sorry.
All right. Motion passes 5-0. Number 2.
Okay, new business item 2, approve the purchase of a closed-circuit television transit van and associated equipment for sewer inspections from Q's Inc. through a piggyback agreement with Houston Galveston Area Council in the amount of $303,453. This is a budgeted capital item this fiscal year. Representative Brad Calzo, Water Reclamation Director, recommendation approved.
Move to approve as read.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any public comment? All right, I'm going to be transparent here. I must have missed this one. Could somebody explain to me what this is? Exactly.
This is to look at the sewer lines.
Are we're purchasing a camera system, basically van with another?
Van base?
Yes, we currently have an existing van. The van itself is from 2010. We're not getting rid of that. But the equipment that we have in that van is from the late 90s, early 2000s. And it's hard to get parts anymore. So we just need to upgrade all of that. And we're going to refurbish that van into an electrical van.
Okay.
But this is sewer camera equipment. If we have a blockage out in the field, we can stick our camera down there, pinpoint where the blockage is. If we have a crack in the pipe, we'll be able to pinpoint it, dig down, fix the pipe. And we're also getting a lateral camera. We'll be able to stick down residential laterals to see the condition of their pipes and recommend improvements.
Okay, and I see it's a budgeted item. I just want to make a comment, and you're welcome to sit down. Some of the stuff that maybe we could think of too in the future is, I was talking with Wes, the mayor of Cape Canaveral, and there might be stuff like this in the future where we can collaborate with them and buy stuff together, share the cost, and then we share the use of it. And sometimes it's better when you do something like that because constant, normal use of an item is better than something just sitting and not being used.
Yeah, and then you're not planning, you're not staffing your resources with an item you use once every 6 months.
Exactly.
So if we can up that utilization, it's like a boat club, right?
So I would just want to say that maybe in the future, we could try to collaborate with some of the other cities and try to share that cost with them. Would be a good idea to think of in the future. So we had a motion and a second. I don't remember, did I ask for public comment?
Yes.
All right, we're good. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
We did that with the beach rake and it didn't work out so good. But the beach rake, Cape Canaveral thought we'd maintain it and they'd use it. And we thought they'd maintain it and we'd use it and the thing just rusted away.
We'd have to have clear instructions about how we're going to maintain stuff.
But I 100% agree with that because we've got, in Ms. Scott says this all the time, in 10 miles, we've got 6 little cities that all have their own overhead and all administration and all sewer trucks and all fire trucks. It's like, guys, there's some duplicacy there.
Yeah, and I was talking, he's totally into that as well. So
And that was one of the questions when we were signing the MOAs with the fire department. It's like, can this allow us to optimize our assets of, hey, I don't need this piece of equipment because I have access to it in the event I use it one time.
I think it's a great idea.
All right,
I think
3.
we've got like-minded.
Good.
Okay, item K3, approve the expenditure of $191,700 for Gregory Construction, Inc. to perform milling and paving work at 3 locations in the city: East St. Lucie Lane, Marion Lane, in the intersection of Ocean Beach Boulevard and East Cocoa Beach Causeway, and road repair on North Banana River Boulevard. This is a budgeted item.
Move to approve as read.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Just a point of concern, mine says 188,000.
Right, and that was incorrect.
Okay.
Incorrect agendas were printed for the meeting. It's posted correctly on the website.
Okay.
For this meeting, the incorrect agendas were printed.
All right, any public comment on that? All right, again, it's a budgeted item. Any commission comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
We're adjourned.
No, you have to give open.
I have a